She's beautiful. Here we go. Oh, my, 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 my. Oh, yeah. There you go. My nights has gone and just as long as I just stand by you. So come on, turn and stand. Oh, stand by me, stand by me. In the sky, we look upon stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me, stand by me. Check it out, we're gonna break it down like this. Here we go. Well, good evening, my Facebook family and YouTube friends. We are grateful that we have had another opportunity for us to come together again on our talk show. Let's talk about it. The first thing we always want you to do is reach out to someone and share it. Share this page. Then also we want you to comment. Send us your comments and also like it. And then those who are on YouTube, we ask that you will subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then if you would set the little toggle bell, it will alert you every time that we come on. Well, we have had a power-packed week since the last time that we shared on last Thursday. We trust that you have had a wonderful weekend last weekend, which was extended because of the 4th of July. And we participated in a peaceful demonstration march in Baltimore County in the Woodlawn area. We partnered with the Liberty Seven-Day Adventist Church, and we were able to share on that Saturday evening where we peacefully marched from the church down Rolling Road to Liberty Road, and then up Liberty Road to Milford Mill Road, down Milford Mill, and back to the church, where we had a small rally. And for those of you who were able to see even this evening, before coming into the studio, we were out in Towson at the courthouse with Councilman Julius Jones for a rally, peaceful rally for police reform. And so we were able to speak and share there. And then we hurried back to the studio because we knew that you were going to be waiting for us. We've got a special show tonight. I just cannot tell you how happy I am to have one of Baltimore's leading persons, and we will share that with you. But I'm going to see if my control room has just a snippet of that rally on Saturday, if I can show it to you just a little bit to see what we were able to do. They had a marching band, two marching bands. We had a good group of folk, and so we were able to do some things. And so we are grateful that God was able to bless us. I don't think they were able to get it, so we probably won't be able to do it. But anyway, we'll keep trying and see if we can get it for you a little bit later in our show. But just so that you would know, we are out and about. We are doing the things that we need to do. We're talking to people. We are encouraging people to participate. And for those of you who have not registered for the upcoming town hall meeting, virtual town hall meeting that will take place on this coming Monday. As you know, we will be hosting it. We have a power packed panel that will be discussing and sharing about police reform. As you know, we have reached out to several persons that we have asked to participate. All of them did not respond. However, we do have members from the panel that will be sharing with us. So we're grateful. We're all open. We're there. We are moving with a deliberate speed to be able to talk about some things, to be able to share and make sure that we are aware of what's going on. And listen, if you have not registered, we need you to register. The registration is free. It doesn't cost you anything to register, but registration is free. You do have to register. You can go to our link, and there you will see it. We have the police reform virtual town hall meeting will take place on Monday, July the 13th at 7 p.m. And we have our host or our moderator for that evening, for that event, is going to be none other than Miss Tiffany Majors, who is the president and chief executive officer of the Greater Baltimore Urban League. She will be our moderator. Then we have four panelists that have consented to be a part. Dr. Hillary Shelton, who is the director of the NAACP Washington Bureau and senior vice president of policy and advocacy. Also, from Baltimore County, we will have Councilman Julius Jones, who is the councilman for District Number 4. And then we have retired Colonel Melvin Russell from the Baltimore Police Department will be with us. And then we have Chief Troy Williams, who is from the Baltimore County Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And so what we need you to do, we need you to register so that you can be a part of the town hall and you will be able to submit your questions. But you need to do that beforehand so that we will have those questions for the panel. We want to have great discussion. And certainly we want to have persons from both sides to share with us and discuss about police reform. As you know, many things are happening. Many things are happening. And we want to have good conversation. We want to have good dialogue. We want to be able to hear from both sides of the aisle. That way, we will be able to make informed decisions when it comes to putting policies in place and knowing what to do. And so we need your involvement as we share with our panelists. And so we've got some good news to share with you, some good things that we need to talk to you about, and we are happy that you are a part of what we're doing. And so if you have not yet registered, we need you to register. If you are viewing us from Facebook, you can look there. There is a link there. All you have to do is click the link. It'll take you directly to the registration where you just input your information and it will register you right away. And it will send you an email link to let you know that you have been registered. And so what I need you to do, what I need you to do is to register, first of all, yourself. But then I need you to use your power of influence to encourage your family, your friends, your siblings, your children to register as well. Now, last week on our show, we issued a challenge. The challenge was that if you registered yourself and encouraged at least 25 other people to register, then we would give you a book that is going to be that we're going to discuss tonight. Matter of fact, the author of that book is going to be our special guest tonight. And so the way that we ask that you would do it is when you register for the town hall, at the end of your last name, put a hyphen and put the person who encouraged you to register. And that way, every time somebody registers, it sends us an email and we'll be able to keep track of who you were encouraged to register for. Of course, you have to get them to register, and also they have to participate and share in the town hall. And if they do that, then certainly we will see to it that you get a copy of the book Under Color of Law, who is going to be with us tonight. We're so happy to have attorney Dwight Pettit, who is our special guest tonight, and we're going to bring him in just a few minutes. But we need you to do that. Now, one of the things that I did not do, and I told you all, I could not confirm that your book would be autographed. I promised I would get you a book, but I did not promise to get your book autographed. I know Attorney Pettit is quite busy, and I'm not sure what his schedule permits, but in the meantime, we'll talk to him about that. So, again, what I need you to do, you can comment, send us your comments right now. We're able to see them live. Any comments that you submit, we're able to see them live from both YouTube as well as Facebook. And also, you can even start a party, a watch party, right now. If you're on Facebook, you can a watch party where we will be able to share and talk about some things that are going on. We are so happy that you have taken the time to join in with us. There's much to talk about. And so let me take this time to bring in our special guest, none other than the person, let's see, I think we may have lost him, Mr. Pettit. We're getting ready to bring him back in.
Okay, I'm back, Reverend.
All right, so let's take the time. Mr. Pettit, welcome to the Let's Talk About It live stream show.
Glad to be here on with you, Reverend. My pleasure.
We are so happy to have you sharing with us. You are one of Baltimore's leading attorneys that have been around for many, many years, especially as it relates to civil rights issues and being on the front lines. You've got a lot of personal experience to share with our viewing audience. And let me first thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us, to be a part and to share. We know that there's a lot going on right now in our nation, in our city, in our state, and even around the world as it relates to not just police reform, but people are just sick and tired of being mistreated and being dogged and being ostracized and criticized and taken advantage of. Uh, I know that you have probably uh, had many of the cases against police officers in your practice. Won't you take a few moments and just tell us about your practice and what you do and your experience as it relates to wrongdoings within the police department?
Well, Reverend, when I first started out, basically, I had a civil rights practice and a criminal practice. The civil rights practice sort of established itself because of my winning of my father's case, George D. Pettit versus the United States, which was a major case in terms of back pay and discrimination. So that's sort of with the national press from Ebony and Jet and what have you, and the Afro, that sort of launched my career. And as a result of that, with criminal law, I sort of evolved into police brutality. Believe it or not, my first police brutality was representing the city of Baltimore. But as I got into it, it seems like there was such a request from the public for lawyers to, in fact, tackle that subject since I had the background and the federal background. It was easy for me to evolve right into the litigation of police brutality. So over the years, I guess I've handled at least 50 police brutality cases. I worked with the Department of Justice and the consent decree. We gave them the files on about 35 cases. And I had been very successful, but people didn't realize these are really, really tough cases to win because the laws and everything are slanted toward the police. So even though I had victories involving 105 million, the largest victory in the state of Maryland, a nation, one for 8 million, a settlement, another for 7 million. Those were the victories, but people never saw the losses because they were difficult cases to prove. We didn't have videos, and we didn't have cameras, and we didn't have people having the opportunity to see what they're seeing now. And so when I would argue in front of the jury would look at me like, Mr. Pettit, come on. Police are good people. They would never do the things that you're alleging. And now the world is seeing that what I was talking about for the last 35 and 40 years was reality. And so in Baltimore City, I handled some of the biggest cases in Baltimore City during the time in terms of people who were brutalized, killed, and in a lot of cases, as I said, people shot in the back, people shot in the back of the head. So it's been a very brutal litigation experience, but God thrust me into it, and we've been doing that for the last 48 years that I've been in private practice.
Well, let's talk. I was reading your book, Under the Color of Law, and we were able to get your book as we were showing it here on the screen, and I started reading it. And in your opening, you talked about your background. You talked about your family and your father and your grandfather. Many people will not or have not known, did not know that you actually have some Cherokee. I didn't know it till I read your book. You've got some Cherokee in your blood.
Yeah, well, my father's home is right on the Cherokee reservation. We have a big mountain in North Carolina that my grandfather built a house on, and so we were right surrounded by the Cherokee people. And my great grandfather, in fact, married a full Cherokee lady. So I have that connection. And my father basically came out of North Carolina, as my mother did. They moved from here to Baltimore, and from Baltimore into Turner Station, if a lot of folks will know, in Baltimore County. And through the process of him being an electrical engineer, the first black electrical engineer hired in Baltimore City and Baltimore County for the proving ground at Aberdeen, Maryland. But before Aberdeen, it was Fort Holabird. We had to transfer to Aberdeen. And Aberdeen was a little lonely town, as you know. And what we did not know is that we were going to run smack into the racial prejudices that existed at the time. And so my father found that the schools were segregated, and he went to the NAACP, and guess who he got as my lawyers? Jack Greenberg, Juanita Jackson Mitchell, Tucker Dern, and guess who? Last but not least, the great Thurgood Marshall.
Thurgood
I
Marshall.
was destined to want to study law.
What a team! What a team! Especially back
Yes,
then.
indeed.
Back then, that was what they would have considered for like OJ, the
You're
dream
fading out
team.
again, Reverend.
That was the dream team.
Yeah, that was the real dream team. And they successfully litigated, and I was ordered into Aberdeen High School in 1960.
So you were actually part of the results from the litigation in schools being able to allow African Americans to attend. You were a product of that firsthand. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's Brown versus Board of Topeka of Education. Brown versus Topeka Board of Education.
Okay.
And I had the lawyer who argued Brown, Thurgood Marshall, as my lawyer, secured by Juanita Jackson Mitchell.
Right.
In fact, he was so prominent and so energized and so forth. I understand. I was a young man. I didn't remember it, but I was told by Michael Mitchell, who's the son of Juanita Jackson Mitchell, that Thurgood actually cursed the judge out and walked out
What?
of a hearing and said, "Hey, I can't handle this. I can do this in terms of Washington and New York, but I can't handle Baltimore. I mean Aberdeen, Maryland." And he was so infuriated that he walked out of the courtroom, as I understand it. So he was a very, very aggressive and dynamic lawyer.
I must tell you, I was shocked to read some of the things that I've read in your book, especially about the fact that you used to sell. What was that? What was that product that you used to sell as a young?
Wolverine said,
You used to sell that salve that was supposed to be a cure-all.
"That's right. You wipe it on, it cure it all, and you got a religious picture of Jesus and the First Supper or
That's
the
right.
Last
I,
Supper."
I read that in the book, and also you were able, because of your salesmanship, to purchase your first rifle. Am I correct? Did I read
That's
that?
right. But my dad asked me what did I want as a prize, and the company was going to send you money or send you a rifle. And at 5 years old, I offered, requested that he order the rifle.
At 5 years old.
Well, my dad used to take me hunting and fishing. We lived in the woods, so
Right.
him being a North Carolina boy, that was his thing. And so I was just fortunate enough to have the opportunity to grow up with such a great father.
I read that you enjoyed, both you and your father enjoyed fishing. You enjoyed hunting. You hunted deer, squirrels, rabbit, possum, coon. You did all of that.
Oh, we did it all. In fact, the only time my father got mad at me is because he wanted me to get my pilot's license. And I told him I wasn't interested in that. And he asked me why. I said, "Well, Dad, I'm meeting girls now, and I can't take a girl to the drive-in in an airplane. So I need to get my driver's license and not my pilot's license."
I
But
laughed.
he was so
I
ticked
laughed.
off, he went and got his license.
I laughed when I read that in the book. I laughed, and the reason that I laughed is because many people that know me know that I have a commercial driver's license. I have a license to operate just about everything, with the exception of an airplane. And I actually had went to start taking pilot lessons, and my schedule just was so busy that I had stopped. I'm not sure if I want to go back to it and try to take it up now again or not, with so much going on. But I really, really laughed when I read that part in the book where you told your dad you can't pull no plane up to the drive-in movie theater with your girl.
All I was concerned about at that time, Reverend, was girls. But a lot of folks don't know this. You saw it in the book. My daddy was one of the first people to apply to be an Air Force or Army pilot
I did read
before
that.
the creation of the Tuskegee Airmen.
I read that in the book. I most certainly did. And also, I think the caption under that talked about how many people who lead the way in things don't get the publicity or the notoriety. It's those who come after them that seems to get the accolades of it. But actually, much of the work, much of the trials and tribulations happened before it even got to these persons.
Exactly.
Not only did your father apply, but according to what I read in the book, he passed all the tests.
Passed all the tests and they disqualified him, saying that he was 1 inch too tall. And they had not integrated the bomber squad, and he was 1 inch too tall for the fighter squadron. So he tried to bring suit, and they shipped him out to England. And he basically was stationed in England the whole time while he was doing his protest.
And I also read in the book that you had, I think, an uncle who was in the Baltimore City Fire Department.
Yes, Dwight Pettit.
Okay.
He got in trouble for the same reasons in terms of discrimination, but he was one of the first black persons in the Baltimore City Fire Department. You're exactly correct.
Well,
So
I
I had
don't
a
know.
family history of civil rights activism.
Well, I don't know if you know it or not, but I am actually a retired Baltimore City firefighter myself.
Right.
Officially retired January the 11th, 1997 was when I officially retired from the fire department. So I've been
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. And when I read that about you, I said, "Oh, we've got something in common." Now, I read so much in the book, and I wanna ask you a question, and the audience will probably laugh at this or may not pick it up, but you'll probably know right away. Do you have any marbles left? It took a minute to register with
Yeah, I
you.
had to pull that one up. I
I
think my
read
mother
in
threw them
I,
all away,
I
Reverend.
read in the book where you enjoyed playing marbles. And I said, wow, because that was one of my childhood games as well, playing marbles. And probably 5 or 6 years ago, one of my daughters found some marbles somewhere around Christmas time, and she brought me a bag, a little small bag of marbles, because she heard me talk about playing marbles. And then you also talked about, of course, as you know, back in the day, we didn't get a whole lot of things for Christmas. I know during my era, the big thing was if you got a bicycle or a scooter or a pair of roller skates. Back then, roller skates for us were ball bearing number 5. And when you had skates, and then after you kind of messed them up, you pull them apart and you get some 2x4s and you nail them to the bottom of a 2x4 and nail a piece on the top, and you make your own scooter. And then I tell you, and some these children today don't know anything about that,
No, they
Mr.
don't.
Pettit. And now did you ever play Skelly's?
No, I didn't play that. I was too
Skelly
busy shooting marbles.
Skelly's was when we would take the wine bottle tops, and we would dig the black tar out the street, and we would put it inside the tops and fill the tops so that the tops would be heavy. And then you would put it in your hand, and then you would pluck it with your thumb, and you would knock the other person's Skelly out of the circle. Then that's what we played Skellies. But those these young folk today, if it's not a computer, they don't know nothing about that, Mr.
Those were
Pettit.
great days, and all I did was play marbles, football, and baseball. That was it. You
Now,
could
you,
find me one place or the other.
now your father wasn't real big on sports, according to what I saw in your book.
No, he was more or less a woodsman.
Okay.
He enjoyed sports, and in the later part of his life, he liked to watch Michael Jordan. He loved Muhammad Ali, but it's always people who had the commitment to, he felt, to the black community. And of course, we watched Tiger Woods together. But that came late in his life, from the type of sports that he enjoyed on TV. He was not a participant in terms of organized sports. Now, he did box in the CC camp and in college, as several of my uncles did. And so that's how we had the connection to boxing in my family. My father had 10 brothers and one sister, and all of them were athletes or as well as scholars, and all of them, to some form or another, usually got into boxing.
And you broke family tradition when you didn't go to A&T, but you went to, what was it, Harvard,
Howard University,
Howard
undergrad in law.
University,
I
because
was the
most
first one
of your
to
family,
break tradition.
right, most of your family went to A&T. Well, back then it was called um, uh,
A&T College in North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina.
right. Does it sound like to you I read the book?
I think so, Reverend. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Well, I tell you, there's another thing I want to ask you about. Um, is it true? Is it true that you decided not to be a waiter because of an incident that happened in your father's bar when you wasted some beer on a lady's dress?
Well, he had me working, Reverend. At about 5 or 6 years old, he owned a bar, he and my uncle, called the Southside Tavern. And I was supposed to clean tables and serve beer. And I knocked the beer over on a patron, and she had on a white dress. And my daddy whipped the heck out of me, which he later apologized. but but the Southside Tavern was historic in itself, because it was one of the entertainment places in Greensboro, North Carolina, and it was packed every Friday and Saturday night. And it seems like my daddy was always throwing somebody through the window. I don't
That's
know why he didn't use the door,
yeah.
but he would just throw somebody through the window every Friday and Saturday night.
So he had the glass repair people on speed dial.
Exactly. They would be there on Monday morning. My dad was a very volatile man.
Well, based on the things that you shared in the book and how he had a unique temper, we'll just use that terminology, unique.
But great father,
Well, that's good.
as long as I stayed on course.
Well, listen, what do you think society would be like today if we had fathers today like we had back then?
Oh, I think it would have been tremendous, Reverend. That men like him gave us such a foundation. My daddy was just so much uh, into the African American community and being proud and our accomplishments. And he just believed that he was equal to anybody or superior to anybody in terms of academics. And as he went on to prove by having the great victory of Pettit versus the United States, the court went through his whole history in that decision. People can read it. Uh, you know, all of his work, his academic progress, and everything he did. He was, in fact, a tremendous engineer and scientist. And one of his great days in his life was when he got promoted from engineer, electrical and electronic engineer, to electronic and electrical scientist. He was so proud when he came to me to show his papers that he had been promoted to be a scientist and for the federal government, working at ballistic research laboratories. My dad was like, you remember that picture where the ladies were uh, creating the rockets and so forth that they didn't get credit for? My daddy was sort of the same person, but only as a black male. He was like the only black person in Aberdeen Proving Ground in the engineering department working on ballistic missiles and the development and proof services, human engineering laboratories, and the books and things that he would sign. The white folks would get the credit, but the books would go to the Library of Congress. So he was a brilliant, brilliant man, and I was very fortunate. And
Well,
my mother was a rock because she stood right behind him during all of those turbulent years.
well, listen. Also, your father had a unique way, and that's another thing I laughed at in the book of proving his point, or as some would say, rubbing it in people's noses. His education achievements. In the book, it talked about how he would go into the bar and he would have on his suit and tie and he would sit down. And what was that statement he would tell him after he had his first drink?
Basically, he was smarter than everybody else. He didn't have much personality when it came to that.
And then after he had the second drink, what would he say then?
That he had a degree in engineering.
And I think in the book it said by the time he got to the fourth drink, he would
He
take
could beat any man there.
he'd take his coat off until he could beat it.
Oh, he
does
was
it
kind of rough
sound
now.
does it sound like I read the book, Mr. Pettit?
Could you there, Reverend?
Yes, sir. I said, does it sound like I read the book at
Oh, you
all?
read it very thoroughly.
And I haven't finished. I haven't finished. Listen, to my listening audience, I want to encourage you to get Mr. Pettit's book, Under the Color of Law. Now, listen, I haven't even got into the big details of the book. I haven't got into the meat. I'm just getting through the first chapter or so. But another thing that I discovered in your book, you talked about mentors, how you didn't have to look to certain people for mentors because you had mentors in your family. And I think that's one of the things that we are missing in our society today. Our children, our young folk, and even some of the older folk are looking to the wrong people to mentor them. They're looking to movie stars and professional athletes and stuff like that, singers and stuff to mentor them. When really, back in the day, our parents, our uncles, aunts, they were great influences on our lives.
It's very correct. And I had a large family on my mother's side, and a large family on my father's side, and all the men. I was like the firstborn on both sides, and all of them like adopted me as their child. And so I had the greatest mentors in the world in terms of the people that I could look up to and pattern myself out of. And all of them were not just athletes, but all of them were businessmen. They were academics. All of them, six of my uncles went to North Carolina A&T. They were artists. They were business persons. They went the whole scope of occupations. So I didn't have to go anyplace. I didn't have to just have sports heroes. I just didn't have to have entertainment heroes. I could look into my father's family and my mother's family, and anybody that I turned to, I could imitate and try to be like. They were all great people. I was just very, very fortunate.
We have some young people that are watching our show. What would you say to them in just a short period of time? What would you say to them as it relates to mentors and heroes? What would you say to them based from your experience?
Well, I think we have, as I just said, we have a great volume of people that you can look forward to and imitate. We've done so much as a people. You can go back through history, you can go back through time that we have not been given credit for. But the more and the more we look at history and the development of the African American community, the more we find that we have great heroes and great mentors. We don't have to reach any place else in society but our own community. And that is from military to sports to the sciences to any area in terms of literature. Everything that was done in this nation, if you look back, you're going to find that Black folks were part of the beginning and part of the history that we do not give credit for. And today I get surprised every time I discover in another area that it was a Black folk, a Black person that was the individual that started or discovered or made this or made that. History has just shut us down so much. If we just learn our own history, that will help us and young people to look forward to our future instead of just accepting the history that we've been given.
Right. And in fact, one of our viewers just commented and said, don't forget the grandparents. You had a great relationship with your grandparents based on the reading in the book.
Yes, I did. I spent a lot of time with my father's parents more so when I would go to North Carolina. And my grandfather on my father's side, he was a big time minister in Silver, North Carolina. And in fact, when they buried him, everybody in that town and in that community came out on their front porches and their front lawns, and all the flags were half mast. That's
All
how
right.
much he was revered by both Black and white people in his community and the town in which he um, was above in terms of the family being up on the hill and the mountainside. But in terms of the town of Sylvia below him, he was quite a hero and quite a celebrity.
Well, that's outstanding. Well, we've got about 15 minutes or so left. Let's talk about what's going on today. The uprisings, the marching, the demonstrations, the toppling of statues, the cry for police reform. What do you see? What do you see based on your past experience and where we are today?
Well, we at a crossroads, Reverend. We're at a crossroads of reestablishing ourselves. See, the problem with our community in terms of activism, we have been active in several times in our community. We go back to Reconstruction. Black folks were holding all the offices in Washington, what have you. Then the Klan took over after Reconstruction. Then we sort of went to sleep and we bounced back in the 50s and 60s after the boys came back from World War II. And then in the 60s and 70s, we had the great civil rights movement. But every time we sort of said, okay, we've done this, we've done that. America is post-racial. We don't have to fight this battle anymore. And that was the mistake that we always made. We went back to sleep. We didn't have to uh, take up the fight anymore. And this is what I say in terms of the name of the book, Under Color of Law. Under Color of Law is meaning that people who exercise power as policemen and judges and what have you, they did it under color of law. They were authorized to do that, and that didn't begin to be dissolved into the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant. But my point is that every time we raised our heads and had victories, we sort of went to sleep. And so we have to develop this. What I say is so good about this movement now is the young people. And they seem to understand that the movement has to be consistent. The powers that be, the political powers that be, have to feel continuous sustaining of political power, of young people being in the streets, not with violence, but being in the streets and exercising the right to vote and the powers of political persuasion in this nation. And so it's really comforting to see that our young people seem to understand that we have to create a movement that we can sustain, and that movement has to give us the political power we deserve. See, we elected a black president because of the Voting Rights Act, but we let Congress dissolve the Voting Rights Act, and we said, hey, we got Obama, we don't have to do anything else. All that did was excite the conservative right wing to give us a guy like Trump. And so again, the lesson that we had to learn from that we not only have to harness our political power, but we have to be able to sustain it. And see, I'm very much under the conviction that this nation cannot move without the assistance of black people. We are the key to political power. You've got to come through the black community to maintain political power in this nation. And so if we do not act, if we do not focus our political power in terms of your agenda, you can't win.
But Mr.
And it's
Pettit,
only fair.
Mr. Pettit, one of the problems that I have, and I've been saying this now for a while, is that we have, and I appreciate the young folk. Believe me, we can't do a lot without them. We need them. We need their energy. We need their enthusiasm, their excitement, their youthfulness. But for so many times, we see these demonstrations and these marches, but then after that, we don't see anything. That's why what we did over the last couple of weeks, we we put together what I call a plan of action. This plan of action has five components. The first component is galvanize. We have to galvanize folk together. The second component is organize. Once we get them galvanized, then we organize ourselves. The third component is strategize. We should never enter into a battle unless we have done some reconnaissance work and put together a strategy. Then the fourth component is mobilize. Once we have done those other components, then we mobilize ourselves together. And then the last one is exercise. We have to get involved and do some things. And that's why you see me actively involved in what's going on. I'm not just sitting on the sidelines talking about it. I'm not just raising issues or complaining. I'm actually out there. I'm marching. I'm participating. I'm engaging. And my thing is, I don't have to be the one always in charge. What can I do to help somebody else's program or somebody else's petition or somebody else's venture to make it worthwhile? So, what I used as an illustration was when we see all of these young folk marching, what I see is a lot of energy, but I don't see a lot of power. And so, the analysis that I used was if you take gunpowder by itself and sprinkle it on the ground and light it, you'll have a lot of fizzle, you'll have a lot of sparkle. But by itself, it's energy, it's no real power. But if you take that same amount of gunpowder, put it in a case, a casing, and place a lead cap on top of it, it now becomes a bullet. and it now becomes power. And so that's what I've been trying to do. I've been trying to channel this energy that the young folk have into power. And that's why one of our platforms for this talk show is voting. We've been pushing voting. We've been encouraging folk to vote. We have it on our platform where you can click the link right from our Facebook page and register to vote online. You don't even have to go out to do it. Also, another organization that I was working with a couple of years ago, I went down to the Board of Elections and took the course so that I could become certified to register folk to vote. So every time we have something, uh, I'm always on site and I have voter registration forms for people to be able to vote. You can't raise hell if you don't have the power to do anything. All you're doing is just speaking in the air. We have to have the power and the authority to affect change. Would you agree with that?
Well, I agree with it to some extent, but I think the first thing is we have to have the numbers. See, we were dissipated in terms of even the numbers after the civil rights movement. At the time, we believed that we had to have a charismatic leader like King, that we just couldn't do this as a mass of people. But we've since found out that the leader can be killed. And so we have to have, like you said, people like yourself, leadership within those numbers to, in fact, organize and direct that type of energy. But you got to have the power, and that's the beauty of today. That energy in terms of people power is back. And it's not just African Americans, it's our allies across the board. As you see these demonstrations, mixed groups and mixed demonstrations. What we have to be careful about, though, is letting those groups be infiltrated by other people who have other agendas and other interests other than the interests of black folks. So we have to be able to make sure that we are sending the right message, that we have people who were involved in the movement, and that we have the organization within the movement. I mean, we used to have the greatest organizations, the term of the Urban League, the NAACP, CORE, and so forth and so on. You know, where are those national organizations that provided that constructive leadership to, in fact, harness that political energy of the people? And so it dissipated. But now we're seeing that what has happened because of God's work in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the virus, the inequities, the inequalities that are now being demonstrated, the people on the move because of police brutality, things that some of us have been talking about for years. Everybody seems to recognize that we need this agenda and we need to exercise and harness the political power that we have as a people. And I think if you put all, I think we're saying the same thing, Reverend.
That's why the first component of our plan of action is galvanize, pull people together. We need the, like you said, we need the numbers. In fact, right now, I am doing everything I can to encourage people to register for the town hall. Now, I talked about the people that we have on the panel. We've got the vice president of the NAACP. We've got the president and the CEO of the Greater Baltimore Urban League as our moderator. Now, we're pulling people of major status to be a part of what we're doing, but it won't make a whole lot of difference if we don't have folk in the audience. And so we can't go to an auditorium to do it. So we're having a virtual town hall. But I'm having, believe it or not, Mr. Pettit, I'm having a challenge trying to get folk to register, and the registration is free. It don't cost you nothing. You can watch the town hall from your easy chair, from your dining room table, from your bedroom, wherever you in your car. But the challenge is trying to, as you say, get the numbers. What could you say to those who are watching, Mr. Pettit, about that?
Well, basically, what I'm saying, we are at a testing point in our livelihood in terms of November. If we do not harness and move this nation in November, we can just about forget it. It's that serious. Our Constitution is being destroyed. Our rights will be trampled. And so this is the battle for our lives, not just our livelihood, but our lives. What we have to do is convince our young people that this is the war of all wars, and it's coming up right now in November. Uh, God has set the stage to we have a demon in the White House that if we do not have a resounding movement in November so that there will be no mistake, whether he wants to say fraud or this and that have you, there will be no mistake that the voters in this nation, whether led by black folk or people of color, that the voters of this nation have sent him a resounding message that he has to go. And that's the same with the Senate, McConnell and all those other characters, and taking back of the Senate, taking back of the state houses with the governors, and taking back, or maintaining the House of Representatives, and exactly, absolutely taking about the White House. So, I mean, we cannot see this, Reverend, as a time of challenge, the time of our community and our existence. If we cannot understand this in this day and what's going on now, then God will.
Well,
we will have been not forsaken, but we will be in dire danger.
It's not just a fight for our lives, but it's a fight for our children's lives, our grandchildren. What people don't realize, he has already put in more judges that will live and hold those spots down for 30, 40, in some case 50 years. He's put in over 200 judges in his first term. The second most judge appointments of any president, the second most. Can you imagine what he would do if he gets another term?
We don't even have to talk about the Supreme Court. Just the judicial branch of government will have been corrupted. Because he didn't even talk about, you don't even have to be qualified to be a federal judge. In terms of his determination, if you pledge allegiance to him, that's all you need is
That's all you need. That's
you
all
don't have to be approved by the American Bar Association. You don't have to practice law. You practically don't even have to have gone to law school.
Yep. In fact,
you have to be right wing, a white male, and that's the basic credentials, and you can go to the court.
One of our viewers said suggested that our viewers read the book by Philip Magali, A World Without Black People. It's a good book to read. What do you think? What do you think? Police reform. Well, you hear defunding the police. That's a big topic. To you, what does defunding the police look like?
Well, that's one I can't go along with. With all the crime, especially the black on black crime, we need all the police resources that we can get. I think the police need to have prioritize their funds and put them more into social mechanisms in terms of psychological areas, and we need to put more money in terms of the roots of this discord in terms of jobs, opportunity, and what have you. But I think the police need to be dissolved. The unions need to be dissolved, the police FOP, and we need to have a police commissioner that's going to have some type of consistency and to take the police department apart and remake it in terms of the images of real good public service. We don't have that now, but taking away all the money in terms of strike forces and so forth that are necessary in the battle on narcotics. I'm talking about I'm not talking about crime in terms of a war on drugs and a war, which is a war on black people. I'm talking about a real police department that is going to reflect community policing and community justice for all people and all of this. I mean, you all would be surprised, Reverend, if I told you some of the stories of the cases that I've tried that were so horrible. If people had seen videos of that, the nation would have been in uproars years ago. I got people one man who was in fact Mr. Hubbard, who was handcuffed on his stomach, and they shot him in the back of the head. I mean, that wasn't the abnormal, that was the normal. And so if we'd have had the videos to see that, that we see now in terms of people being choked to death, people would have been horrified. And I'm just talking about one case off of many, many cases. And these police officers were in fact promoted. They were in fact raised up as heroes. They weren't disciplined. They weren't prosecuted. We didn't have a prosecutor that had any guts to prosecute the police until we got the state's attorney in this particular case to prosecute in terms of the Gray situation. And so, uh, people would be shocked as what we have been through, what we have endured, and what has been going on in this nation that we're now recognizing. I don't mean to give a speech, but I get so emotional about it, Reverend, because I've lived it so long and seen so many jurors and been in so many courtrooms and fought so many cases where it was just atrocious what the police were able to get away with.
Well, one of the things that I will say again for the record, that all police officers aren't bad. And so
Right.
we should not even think that. However, the ones that are bad need to be dealt with. And we have to be careful talking about defunding the police. When you talk about the crime that we currently have, can you imagine what it would be like if we didn't have any police? Not only that, but now we're dealing with officers quitting and resigning. Here's what I see coming down the pike, Mr. Pettit, in some of these cities. When police officers are not showing up for work and they're quitting and they're resigning in these cities, that's going to do nothing but force the city and the state to actually bring in the National Guards again. Because if you don't have police officers working, then you're going to have some type of law and order. And this is what I see coming down the pipe. What you think about that?
Well, see, you have to be very careful at what you ask for. See, I've always believed there was an agenda of the conservative right to let crime get so much out of control that the community would demand law enforcement, whether it be militaristic or not. And that could open the door for a military rule and seizure of our democratic form of government. That's all Mr. Trump is looking for. If you look at what he did in terms of the demonstrations and what have you, he's itching to, in fact, bring in the military and declare martial law. So we
Certainly.
have to be very careful what we ask for until we have the assurances that we got the leadership that are going to be able to control those powers that be that want to turn this country into a totalitarianship.
Well, Mr. Pettit, it has been a wonderful opportunity to share and talk with you. How can people get your book?
It's the Our Universe is the publisher, and we have them in my office at 3500 Hilton Road, and you can get it through Amazon.com, and it's available, as I understand it, in some local bookstores.
All right. Well, certainly, if anybody needs to get the book, they can always contact me. And I know because of the virus, your office is not accepting public people to come in at this time. But what folk can do is if they want a copy of the book, contact me, and what we can do is make arrangement. Or again, they can order them online. Amazon, I believe, has them. They can order them online. But if anybody has any issues with getting the book, certainly they can reach out and get the book. Well, once
Or
again,
if they send us the $20, we'll send the book back to them.
okay, so they can mail you money order, and you will get the book to them, or they can call your office. What is the number at your office, Mr. Pettit?
410-542-5400.
All right. Well, you have been listening to Mr. Pettit, and we thank him. Mr. Pettit, thank you so much for sharing with us, giving us good information that we can use, and helping us to understand what's going on in and around our city and nation. Well, our time, our time is up. We've got
Thank you,
to go.
Reverend Mason.
Thank you, sir. You've got a friend here, Mr. Pettit. Anytime you need to get the word out about something, you can certainly call me, and we will be able to get you in as long as we have availability. Next week, we
Right.
have Baltimore County Executive Johnny O will be with us as our guest. Don't forget, those who have not registered, please register for the town hall that's coming up on this coming Monday at 7 p.m. Thank you again. Take care, and we'll see you on the other side.